Very good morning to all our dear listeners, viewers. Welcome to ACFIM Talks. It's another edition. Today with you, Felix Kafuma, your usual host, and I'll be moderating this session. We are discussing a very important topic at the behest of a very interesting landmark where Uganda, I think it was early in the week, when the final investment decision concerning the oil production was announced. So in 2016, I think it was 2016 or 2006 actually, the commercial viability of oil in Uganda was discovered, and since then, Uganda has walked the journey to make this happen. With me in the studio, I have Onesimus Mjenyi and Winfred Ndabire. I'll be introducing them in a short while, but allow me first to invite everybody to join and be part of this discussion by joining our social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter, including our YouTube channel, and be part of the conversation. You send your comments, you send your questions, and we'll be able to answer them, and also be able to pick your thoughts on a very interesting discussion or topic for today. Uganda's oil, is it a blessing or is it a curse? Allow me to lay a bit of foundation and context to this discussion. As you all know, last week, the final investment decision for oil production in the Albertine Graben was announced. This announcement signified the commitment of the oil companies to invest close to 10 billion US dollars, which translates to about 34 trillion Uganda shillings, basically to develop Uganda's oil and gas resources through the implementation of the Tilenga project in Bulisa and Moya districts, the Kingfisher project in Hoima and Chikube districts, and the East African crude oil pipeline, which has come to be known as the ECO, which apparently is going to cross the 10 districts of Hoima, Chikube, Kakumiro, Chankwanzi, Gomba, Mwende, Wengo, Sembaole, Chotera, and Rakai in Uganda. So the signing of this final investment decision officially sets in motion the detailed engineering, procurement, construction phase by a joint venture of partners, which involves or includes the Uganda National Oil Company, that is the one that protects the interests of Uganda, Total Energies, and then China National Offshore Oil Corporation, SINOC, with a commitment to start production by 2025. Like I said, this journey began in 2006 when the commercial viability of oil production in Uganda was discovered. Like I said, with me, I have two panelists. I'll start with the lady, Winfred Ndabire, who is the Executive Director of Global Rights Alert and has over 15 years of experience in development work, 10 of which have been in natural resource governance. So she has engaged in natural resources, handling campaigns from local to international, addressing aspects of gender and inclusion, community rights, as well as corporate accountability. Winfred is an active member of Publish What You Pay campaign, Civil Society Coalition on Oil and Gas, and is also representative to the Uganda Extractives Industry Transparency Initiative, EITI. Winfred, you're most welcome to ACFIM Talks.
Thank you, Felix. Good morning to you and to the listeners.
It's a pleasure to have you. Our second panelist is Mjenyi Onesimus, who is a public analyst, is a researcher, done a lot of policy analysis on a number of areas, and he has equally published these papers and researches. He has extensive knowledge in natural resource governance and very good understanding of national development frameworks. He's an advocate for the High Court of Uganda with wide experience in providing policy and legal advisory services. He's also a member of Uganda Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, but oversees its implementation in Uganda as well. Onesimus, you're most welcome to ACFIM Talks.
Thank you, and good morning to you, listeners and viewers.
All right. Like I said earlier, I introduced myself. As usual, my name is Felix Akuma, who is going to moderate today's session where we discuss Uganda's oil. Is it a blessing? Is it a curse? And allow me to pick it up from there. First of all, Onesimus, let me start with you on this one. Finally, the long-awaited oil production in Uganda is set to start. There were a lot of smiles, a lot of anticipations, and the first phase is already in motion now that we signed. What is your take to be when concerning this greatest achievement or landmark? I should call it a landmark. Should we get concerned or should we get excited? From where you are, what is your take and quick thoughts on this landmark?
Thank you very much, Felix, for that question. I want to believe that we do appreciate exactly what we mean when we talk about this oil curse. And I wanted to start from there so that as we move on, we're able to understand each other. That the oil curse basically is that paradoxical situation or unpleasant situation in which a country performs underperforms economically despite having oil and gas, and that is picked from the resource curse, basically, which looks at availability of natural resources, but you have people in poverty, or the country is not able to lift its people out of poverty. And obviously, when the commercially viable oil was pronounced, and finally the final investment decision, there was excitement in the country, and rightly so, because of what is known about oil. There was also some level of anxiety in terms of those who understand what oil means. And I imagine that's why we have this topic, oil a curse or a blessing. Now that we are just moving into production, because we've been in the process of exploration. And now that the final investment decision has been made, we are moving into production, and therefore the development of the infrastructure leading to the production of the first oil. So we don't have oil as we speak. And therefore, whether a curse or a blessing, we'll basically use the predictive analysis, looking at the situation, where we are coming from, where we are. What do we expect? Should we expect it's going to be a curse? Should we expect it's going to be a blessing? Felix, allow me then to say that for oil to be a curse, there are certain situations that normally exist. Normally, countries get excited about the revenues because it is a high value product, and then they go into borrowing, and they borrow, and you know that the prices of oil are so volatile, and subsequently you find that you've overborrowed, and therefore you are not able to make money out of the product. And you know where this country is in terms of borrowing. I think we're now at 50% of the GDP, which is really not a good indicator. But the second thing is that normally when countries discover oil, they increase their appetite for military dominance and expeditions. And countries that have pursued that have certainly seen oil as a curse, because then you waste all the resources, all the revenues in military expeditions, trying to become militarily dominant. But we also have the corruption perspective. You know, there are big deals in oil. And if you're a country with a high appetite for corruption, and you know where Uganda is, now in the club of the South Sudan, Somalia, Yemen, Libya. And when you look at the ranking, it is among the 40 most corrupt countries out of the 180 across the globe. So if you don't check that, certainly oil will finally become a curse. So I wanted to start it from that perspective. We also have the environmental aspects. We also have the negative social and economic impacts, which, if not managed, obviously oil turns into a curse. It can only turn into a blessing when you do the reverse. You get the revenue, you use the revenue properly to develop infrastructure, you invest in other sectors of the economy, so that even when the resource is finished, you still have something to show that you got out of this oil. I hope that gives us some fair perspective of why we are talking about the oil curse and then the oil as a blessing.
Thank you so much, Onesmus. You really paint the picture of what makes it a curse and what makes it a blessing. And you made some indicators, and I was looking at Uganda, talked about our debt ratio, talked about corruption, you talked about our appetite for foreign military excursions. Let me bring you in here, Winfred. What's your take looking at Uganda, where we are at the moment? Should we get excited? Should we get concerned?
Thank you very much. Maybe just to give us a perspective, I just wanted us to know how much oil we are talking about and where it is. So you know we discovered oil in 2006, as you mentioned, and so far we have confirmed 6 billion barrels of oil. Out of that, commercially, we can get out 1.4. So that's the oil that we know we have, and we can extract and we can sell. But also we know that more than 80% of the potentially oil-rich area is not yet explored. So we have a big part of the Albertine that we have not explored, and we believe that we could have more oil than we have confirmed so far. And the players we have, Total Energies, that you saw featured dominantly when we signed when they announced the final investment decision. We have CNOOC that you mentioned. We have the Uganda National Oil Company that is representing us as Uganda, representing our commercial interests. As well, we have Ama Energy as well as Oranto, and those are still doing exploration. Are we excited? Yes. I think since 2006 to date, there are so many years, and Ugandans, have been expecting, when is the oil flowing? I think we're almost moving around with our jerry cans. Every time our petrol prices go up, we're thinking of when does Ugandan oil get into the petrol stations, and we probably start, benefiting and enjoying the resource. But beyond that, there are people that have invested heavily in the industry. There are businessmen that have invested heavily in the industry. I know that our budget projections also always refer to resources from oil. I know that if you look at the National Development Plan, especially the third one, it relies heavily on the resources that are going to come from oil, gas, and other minerals, but also communities, especially those that are in the areas where infrastructure developments are taking place, especially those that have been, promised compensation, or those that are looking to providing goods and services, have been wondering when this will be. So we are excited, and we congratulate the government on one hand, and of course oil companies. But on another hand, we know that the work has just started. We've been dealing with land acquisition, compensation, studies, environmental impact studies, raising concerns, informing legislation, informing the processes that have been going on, and now the works begin. We acquired land for what? So the construction of pipelines, the one that is going to Tanga in Tanzania that will take our oil, the refinery, the airport is almost complete, the feeder pipelines that are going to be coming from various oil wells, all that work is going to begin, and that has an implication on how communities will live around that. But also it has very, very good promises, because then it opens up, space and opportunities for services and goods to be provided. So we hope that we're going to see a lot of foreign investment coming in by the oil companies. The pipeline alone could see us having foreign direct investment of about 3.5 billion US dollars. But also we know that, in terms of local content and preparations, there are many small and medium enterprises that have been trained, that have positioned themselves. Others probably have acquired loans. So we expect to see them providing goods and services and earning, and that money, economically will boost who we are as a country, and our revenues are supposed to be really, improving. We are also going to have, once the production of oil starts, we're going to see ourselves saving a lot of money, maybe about 1.7 billion US dollars that we have been spending on importing, oil-related products. So that, yes, are we heading in the right direction? We needed the final investment decision to be taken. Are we prepared? We're talking about local content. We're talking about construction of pipelines. We're talking about many people, over 160 people in camps. What does that mean to a community that lived on its own? What does that mean into the traffic on our roads? What does that mean in terms of social norms and practices? What does that mean in terms of environment that Onesimus talked about? At a national level, I know that works around legislation to make sure that we have the right laws. We have the Petroleum Authority in place. We have the EITI group in place. The Ministry of Energy is well trained and positioned. Can they deliver? Will they be able to monitor and report to Ugandans and account to Ugandans? We already have been getting money going into the petroleum fund, and every budget period we hear about how the fund is raided. So then what is going to happen when we start having lots of money that is coming in? So the investments are coming in well. That's a blessing. That's good. How we manage them, how we manage people whom we found in their communities, how we work around them as we invest, will determine whether this is a curse or a blessing. And indeed, we are going to talk about compensation issues. We're going to talk about national content. We're going to talk about environmental monitoring and accountability. We're going to talk about the relationship of corporate investors and communities, the social license. And then, of course, we should be able to question around the big monies they are coming in. What happens to a country like Uganda when we start earning a lot of money from oil, and we cannot, and the appetite? Are we going to be able to contain our appetite? Are we going to be able to make the rightful investment decisions? Are we going to be able to follow our national development priorities, or are we going to get excited and start shopping things that will not make sense and will not take us to the middle income status that we expect to go to in the nearest future? Thank you.
Wow, wow. Onesimus, you had Winfred, and she talks about the legal framework that has been put in place, the agencies that are responsible to oversee the management of this oil production. And there's a lot of euphoria around all these opportunities that are around engineering, especially the first phase of the work that is around procurements, projects around engineering, construction. But the bigger question, or the bigger elephant in the room, is how, even when we have a protection of local content to allow local companies to partake of these opportunities, how prepared are these companies to really, really, really tap into these opportunities?
Thanks very much, Felix. Absolutely, I agree. There are quite a number of opportunities, and indeed the law and institutions are in place, but the capacities of Ugandans and the capacities of the local companies to be able to tap into some of these opportunities is still a big area that we have to deal with. In the first place, we have the issue of standards. This is an industry that actually emphasizes standards. It's not an ordinary industry where you take in anything because there are a lot of stakes in terms of investment, in terms of risks, and therefore there are high level standards expected. And I know in this country we are used to so many substandard things. And when I talk about that, you appreciate, you go on the market, the drugs are substandard. You go on the market, everything is substandard. And it's like we don't have standards enforcement agencies. So that is one challenge that we don't yet have the capacity. I know there are quite a number of efforts, the number of institutions that have been put in place where capacity enhancement is being done. But we are not yet there, and we expect that actually we can continue learning on the job now that these opportunities are here with us. There are partnerships that can be executed, and I think that's what has worked elsewhere. That you need local companies need to enter into partnerships with other companies that have the experience and be able to tap into these opportunities. So those are some of the things that can be done. We are enhancing our capacity, we are training, but we also need partnerships so that we are able to bring in experienced human beings and companies that we can team up with to be able to take advantage of some of these opportunities. There are areas where we have the capacity. For example, if you are talking about legal services, you realize that actually we have the capacity. If you talk about accommodation, I think there is a lot of in the real estate has moved quite well, and the industry is providing a lot of opportunities in the real estate industry. But there are other technical areas, and you've talked about some of those engineering aspects where you still need a lot of capacity enhancement to be able to take advantage of these emerging opportunities.
Wow. There's a question Henry is asking, which is that speaks to what has basically bedevilled this country. And there's that adage that Uganda is gifted by nature but cursed by greed. So is there a possibility that the things could be different concerning how we manage our oil? And let me pick this up with you, Winfred.
Thank you, Mr. Muguzi, for your question. I think we can't say that Uganda cannot be better. Have we seen corruption and are we tired of it? Of course, every other year, the Auditor General releases a report that shocks us. And then that's when we talk about things going bad. So often you see headlines, money getting lost, money stolen, money disappeared, money this, money that. Ugandans are tired. And I think for me, the question is, are we willing to be the change we want to see? If for the last 10 years or so, we have worked to make sure there is a very good system for monitoring, and we have set up PAO, for example, the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. We have worked on legislation. We have improved our Public Finance Management Act. We have worked with communities. We have civil society trained in monitoring, understanding environment, understanding the economics of oil, understanding the legislation. What role are we playing? If we want to be tired and say Uganda is corrupt, there's nothing that we can do, then we won't even utilize the resources that we have already set up. We can change. One of the things that we have been looking for is understanding who our investors are, for example, in Uganda's natural resources, in mining and in oil. We have opportunities now. We mentioned that we are members of the EITI, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. It gives us an opportunity to know who these investors are, what kind of agreements and contracts they have with us as a country, how much resource we have, and how then do we use this information, for me, is the question. Because we're going to be getting information in a timely manner. Are we able to utilize this information to cause change, whether it is to hold people to account, whether it is to patch, to close the gaps that are within our financial management systems, whether it is to censure whoever is not performing? That is up to us. Do we have the courage to do that? We should be having the courage to do that. Do we feel tired and discouraged? Probably, but that needs to stop. So if Mr. Muguzi, myself, Onesmus, and Felix, if we are willing to hold ourselves to the highest standard, if we are willing to hold our leaders themselves to the highest standard, if we understand the role of each one of the stakeholders in the sector, and they too understand their role, I think we should be able to say enough is enough. This resource has the ability to raise, our GDP. Let us not squander it, and it can always start with us. No one will come and appear in wherever money gets thrown to and tells them to stop. It has to be us who are going to ask, how much money do we have? Where are we investing it? Has it reached the beneficiary? Are the contractors paid for the work that they should have? They should construct. Have they constructed that road? Whether road, a hospital, or both agricultural inputs? Yes, it starts with us, and we can make things change if we have the determination. Yes, we can make things change. I don't want to lose hope. The challenge will be if we just sit back and expect miracles to happen. Unfortunately, they won't happen. We are the miracle workers. We are the ones that should create what we need to see.
Okay, okay. We'll be going for a short break in a short while, but before we go for a short break, let me just have one quick um, comment as a rejoinder, and actually it's a question to Onesimus as a rejoinder, because I understand where Henry is coming from, the experiences of other countries. We've seen what's happening in Angola, Nigeria, and should we say that, okay, overall, when you look at our legal infrastructure and institutional framework, it is good enough to protect us and make Uganda immune from the oil curse that stems from greed? Because I think that's where the biggest problem is.
I come in. I come in after break.
No, you can come in. Then after we shall go for a break.
Thanks very much, Felix. The policy, legal, and institutional frameworks are very, very, very important. But these frameworks and institutions must be allowed to work. And when you look at these countries that have failed and where oil has become a curse, it's not that they don't have these legal, policy, and institutional frameworks. They are there, and some of them are quite very good. But because there is limited or lack of accountability and transparency in the manner in which business is conducted, then you find that actually there are a lot of leakages that happen. There are a lot of abuses that happen. And I will give you a very simple example. If Parliament, invites the executive to account, to explain certain situations, and the executive decides not to appear, it cannot account, and there is no penalty. That tells you that the existence of Parliament as an institution and the existence of the law is not going to change that situation. So we need the mindset change, both the leaders and the citizens of this country. While we talked about willingness of citizens, we must also have the willingness of the leaders to change the way things are happening. Otherwise, the law, the institutions cannot operate in a vacuum. So we need governance. We need good governance for the institutions and for the law to be able to apply. And as a country, we have a choice to do that. But when you look at the legal policy institutional framework, everything looks good. We have very good legal provisions. We have set up institutions, and they are really have relevant people with wide experience, highly trained, and they have the capacity to deliver. But if we don't allow them, if we don't allow that independence of these institutions to do their job, if we are not able to account to the citizens, then we may still go the way other countries have gone, which have had their natural resources as a curse. Thank you.
Okay, there you have it. Let's go for a break, and then when we come back, we will look at some of the comments the president made when we actually, in actual sense, when the final investment decision was being announced. There were some interesting comments that we made, and we tried to have a discussion around those. Let's go for a break, and then we'll resume our discussion.